The not-for-profit Whistleblower House, which aims to protect and support whistleblowers and acknowledge their vital role in society, had its official launch this past week. Whistleblower House will act to facilitate and give access to support services for whistleblowers and help create greater awareness of their plight while working to champion the issue of ethics and democracy. Now, the organization was founded by the former Deputy Commissioner at the South African Revenue Service, that's Ivan Pillay, and the former CEO of Trillian Management Consulting, Bianca Goodson, as well as the senior manager of organisational ethics and the Ethics Institute, that's Liezl Groenewald. I'm joined now by Ben Theron. He is the Whistleblower House Executive Director, the human rights activist and author Mary de Haas, and Liezl Groenewald, who is from the Ethics Institute. To all of you, thank you very much for making the time for this important conversation. Can I start with you, Mr. Theron, and ask you just simply why it is that you felt you needed to start this Whistleblower House?
Please call me Ben. As we engage with whistleblowers, and particularly after the results on the Commission, as well as the process as it went along, we realized that whistleblowers are extremely lonely, they're exposed, and they're left to their own devices. So they blow the whistle, and then once that happens, they actually suffer the consequences as much as they're doing what they're doing for the better of South Africa. We realized that they need support, and there is no institution in South Africa that actually provides end-to-end support. And we decided that it's time that something needs to be done, and hence the birth of Whistleblower House.
All right, let's come to you, Liezl Groenewald. What is in place right now, to your understanding, in terms of protecting whistleblowers?
You are talking about currently not the Whistleblower House, but in the country as such.
In terms of legislation, yes.
Yes. We have the Protected Disclosures Act as amended in 2017, and it provides protection against for whistleblowers against occupational detriment. So this means when a whistleblower has been demoted or disciplinary charges brought against them or suspended because they blew the whistle, then the whistleblower can, after the fact, approach civil courts, and they can lay a charge against the organization for reinstallment or whatever remedy there will be. But that is all. So nothing in terms of, let's say, a person has security threats against them. That in the Witness Protection Act, that is catered for, but not all whistleblowers are witnesses. So there is just nothing really in place at the moment that can assist the whistleblower, like Ben said, from end to end, and we might talk about some of the services that we provide, but one of it is then to help a person and their families, if needed, in terms of safety and security.
Yeah. Mary de Haas, let's come to you. My understanding is that you have worked with some of these whistleblowers, and you have seen people dying. You have seen people escaping South Africa because they feel that they're not protected. If you were to just give us a summation of their state, how safe or vulnerable are whistleblowers?
They're extremely vulnerable, and please bear in mind that I only have a few minutes, so
I'm aware.
I shall have my say and then log off if it's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I have been trying to get protection for Thabisa Zulu, for example, for the last few years. The public protector ordered his protection, and the Minister of Police refuses to give it to him. It's a very modest request. He doesn't qualify for witness protection because it's not that. All he wanted was a couple of bodyguards of his own choosing. The Minister of Police refuses to give it to him, although it's his job, obviously, to ensure crimes don't happen. And he has overridden President Ramaphosa, who, after there was an attempt on Zulu's life, said he would get protection, but Thabiso Zulu doesn't have it. The police are part of the persecution. They have, the last year they abused him, no, the year before. Then last year, in October, they arrested him and took, without any court order, his telephones, one of them damaged beyond repair. So the persecution comes from within the police. I'll give you one more case study now, and that is Miss Patricia Marshall. She is a very senior administrator in the Free State Police. For years, she has been approaching everybody, the presidency, the portfolio committee. Well, she starts with, she finds glaring irregularities of irregular promotions. Let me tell you the most recent one. She goes to her line manager. She's also not blown the whistle. She's referred a dossier of firearms criminality in the police to the Hawks for investigation. Right. Last year, she sent a letter to Commissioner Sitholi's office detailing irregular promotions, asking for intervention. Nothing was done. Then the persecution started. One of the people she'd named as being irregularly promoted brought a malicious case of harassment against her. Her phone was seized. Her personal phone was seized irregularly. Still hasn't been returned. I personally wrote to the head of legal services 6 weeks ago. It still hasn't been returned. Then they also said she'd committed an offence because she wrote to the National Commissioner about these irregularities. She then had her car followed for a long distance, thinking whoever was following her, they were police in unmarked vehicles, but it was her elder son who'd gone to fetch his brother a long way away from a boarding school. Car followed them home, and then when they found out she wasn't in it, left. Then they brought an expeditious action against her in January, and that is the way they get rid of people in the police. They've been doing this for years. There are hundreds of people who've been dismissed irregularly because they don't go along with a crooked cabal. Okay, then she's been told now, that was withdrawn, that's been put on hold, and the man who was chairing it was one of the people whose promotion she had blocked. He was again demoted. She has now been told she's going to be arrested for a non-existent crime, and they're going to take her miles away. That's tomorrow. Now, the point I'm telling you all this is that the problem starts with the police. If we don't deal with the police, we can forget about protecting whistleblowers. And it's not the matter of just removing Sitholi. The whole management. I've been working on policing issues since the early 90s. The whole management is top-heavy. The promotions are grossly irregular. You'll have people sitting there who have no proper training because they're bodyguards, they're MK, and they're in senior positions. So until there is an overhaul of the police, and the people who arrested Thabiso last year were the ministerial task team, which reports to the minister. Clearly, and they are looking at political killings. They're headed by a non-detective who's never been a detective who reports to Clearly. Now, they have just released on bail some of the hitmen in the Sindisa Magaka case who are on record as wanting to kill Thabiso Zulu. Look, I mean, I'm telling you this to show you just how grave the situation is, and until we have something done with the police, I mean, there has to be, we cannot have a new commissioner in Sitholi's place until there's been a complete forensic audit of promotions, because the wrong people are sitting there. Whoever gets appointed from the list that's circulating is not the person, because Clearly runs the police. And he wants his person so he can run it remotely. And he is the one who has left Thabiso Zulu open to being killed. And Patricia Marshall.
Right.
So, I mean, this is my say on whistleblowing, because until you deal with the police, and there are a few of us trying to deal with this, we have to restructure the police. So I've had my say, and you guys can now talk about how we deal with it.
All right, Mary de Haas, that's a mouthful indeed. And I have to tell you that it is absolutely stressing what you have just recounted. All right, so we're going to let Mary de Haas go, as you said, very limited time with her. So when we return, we'll pick up on the conversation, particularly the distressing elements that police are part of the persecution of whistleblowers. That's very problematic. We continue after this. You're watching Politics Unscripted, the segment of the show. It is the debate uncensored, and we're talking about whether or not whistleblowers in our country are adequately protected. And to continue this conversation, we are with Ben Theron. He is the Whistleblower House Executive Director. We also have Liezl Groenewald. She is from the Ethics Institute. Ben, let's come to you. Before we get deeper into what Mary de Haas recounted earlier, when it comes to protection, we've got time. Can you just list for us what it is that you think whistleblowers should be given in terms of their personal safety?
You've got to understand that in South Africa, we live in a lawless society. Nobody feels safe in their houses. Nobody wants to be on the roads. So what happens with whistleblowers, if they get attacked, the question normally that gets raised is this a normal, just run-of-the-mill attack, or is it linked to the whistleblower? And there's always confusion about that. What ought to happen, very simply, is that once a whistleblower comes forward with information, and remember, you can blow the whistle without being a whistleblower, because you share the information without being a public persona, etc.
Yeah.
The difficulty we have is once somebody becomes in the open and somebody knows, like Ethel Williams is a whistleblower, at the moment they know that, there are other factors that come into play. Number one, people get abused at work, they get victimized, they get demoted, the disciplinary process get taken against them, and they lose their jobs. So what needs to happen is that the society and as well as the public sector ought to step in and say there are certain things that ought not to happen, and that is victimization within the workplace, ostracization in the normal where I live, the residential area, school children gets bullied, and therefore the family of the whistleblower as well as the whistleblower gets isolated. And what happens then is psychological stress, mental health, physical health starts suffering. There's no money to survive. All those kind of things come into play later on. And in terms of those things ought to be done. Now, because the state has not done these things, whistleblower was put in place so that we can at least address some of those challenges. I want to make it clear, Mary de Haas was very vocal on the way the police are or are not handling it. Our role is not to comment on those type of things. Our role is, once a whistleblower becomes a whistleblower, is to engage the whistleblower and support the whistleblower through the journey. So that is the role we play. We do not comment directly on whether the public protector, with the MPA, with the SIU, or the police do the job. Our job is to make sure that the person that does whistleblowing is supported and protected on that journey as we move along.
And we're going to talk about that support as we gradually get deeper into the conversation. Liezl, if I could come to you, the reason I asked the question around what form of protection do whistleblowers need is as a result of Ethel Williams, who sits outside of the country. And I just want to bring up a statement that we have also put up on a graphic. And this is a statement that was made by Ethel Williams to us when we tried to invite him for this conversation. And these are the words of someone who obviously is extremely tired, completely worn out by this whole process. And I just want to quote exactly what he is saying. And the first line there says, "I have been stranded outside South Africa for 4 months now and have still not received any communication, support or protection from the South African government or business community, despite my frequent requests and their frequent public statements. Even in exile, I have continued to campaign for the good of South Africa by raising awareness of the devastation that companies like Bain & Company caused to our society and the deception of their continued cover-ups. The actions by the UK government to investigate Bain is an example of the impact of my efforts led by Lord Hayne. I have been abandoned and I feel despair. Why is it that I continue to be ostracized for wanting to see key actors in state capture brought to account? These are the words of Ethel Williams. In your view, Liezl, who should have communicated to Ethel Williams, just as a start, to say, we are with you?
Yes, Ethel has been going through quite a lot, and fortunately we are in touch. But when there's a security threat against him, or the initial security threat, it should have been, I would say, and Ben, you can differ with me in this regard, but the police should have contacted him. He has laid charges. The police could have contacted him. Private security firms could have contacted him, although they are a bit hesitant, or they have been, until Johan van Lockerenberg and Tema Masiko's, their places have been broken into recently, and then private security firms came to the fore. Business should have contacted Ethel, but it's typical. Ethel's journey is not a new journey for a whistleblower. There are so many others who have suffered what he has been suffering in terms of the ostracization, people just turning their backs, old friends. Ethel will also tell you that at some point after he blew the whistle initially, his old colleagues, his old friends just, turned their backs on him. It is as if we want whistleblowers, but then once they have said what they needed to say, we just say, okay, thank you very much, and off we go. And that is what, like Ben has said, is that is where we saw the gap between the Protected Disclosures Act and there's a lot of talks about let's get things going. The President said we must protect whistleblowers. Deputy Judge Zondo said we must now really start to look after our whistleblowers, but no one is doing something. And at that point in time, even it was about July last year, it's when Bianca, Goodson, and I and Ivan said, right, let's just do something. Enough of talk. Let's just do something. And it's a pity that, not a pity, but it took civil society to come in and to fill that gap. And currently, there are many talks in government agencies to establish a whistleblowing agency. I'm not sure what they plan to name it, but we know that that is going to take very long. And therefore, together with Ben and Martha Ngoye and Cynthia Stimple, we have now the Whistleblower House that will step in here. And in a case such as someone like Ethel, we provide a space for that person to come to us and say, look, I have blown the whistle. I don't know what to do now further. I don't have money for legal fees. Ethel can perhaps describe how it will work exactly. But here's a house, a meeting place for courage is what we call it. And we will take your hand. We are facilitators of services. We are not, walking the path or go with the whistleblower, holding the whistleblower's hand. But we give that access to, let's say, seeing that we're talking about security, to a security firm, or we have someone that conducts a risk assessment on the person, on the whistleblower, and then we can take them further.
Ben, is it not disappointing that the question I have put to Liezl, and that is that who should have contacted Ethel Williams first, and she has named the police, she's named private security firms, she's named business. Police are obviously a no-go area if we are to go along with what Mary de Haas told us. But is it not disappointing that someone high up in government should have reached out to Ethel Williams? Am I wrong to assume that that should have been perhaps the first step?
No, you're not. Ideally, remember the place where you did the exposure was in SARS, South Africa Revenue Services. But by implication, Telkom was also implicated in the process because Baines did work for both Telkom and SARS. Somebody in government, remember the one thing we should not forget, a whistleblower, when they come forward with information, saves the country millions, and in some instances billions. So therefore, we should actually thank them. We should carry them on our hands. We should raise them high and say thank you for that. We should support them in every way. Nobody in government has done that. We are in contact with Ethel at the moment. We're trying to assist him. We're trying to make sure things happen there. But we need to be very specific as we move forward in this conversation that says, what is the role of Whistleblower House? What can we do? Yeah. What can't we do? Because there are expectations. We opened our doors at 9:30 on Tuesday morning. By close of business Wednesday, we had in excess of 30 people contacting us with whistleblowing information, which we don't necessarily need. We actually, where we focus our energies is in supporting that particular person. So the applications that we had over 30 and is now over 40 is meant, and they came forward and asked us, how do you assist us with security? Which lawyer can we contact? Because I need lawyer. And that's a variety of fields. It's either in employment, it is either because they are being sued, they're at the arbitration hearings, they need help. And they don't have money to do this, they don't know what to do, they don't know what the rights are. So absolutely, that's the role we want to play, is to facilitate services to the whistleblower where and if they need it.
We've also had one or two people, sorry, colleague.
Sure, no problem.
We also had one or two people already that says, you know, I want to blow the whistle. How should I go about it? Now, they mustn't blow the whistle, by us. Yeah, to us. But what we do is say, right, you are thinking of blowing the whistle. Do you have an idea of what it will entail? What will happen to you? What can you expect? Maybe you can expect for your family. And after all that has been said and done, do you still want to consider blowing the whistle? And then we say, okay, now we take you to a legal advisor who will help you, follow the right route, have the right documents available, and so on. And Polani, I think, the one thing that we haven't talked about, and I'm just now talking, is we haven't looked at the psychological harm that our whistleblowers suffer. And I mean, you can hear the desperation from Ethel's statement there. Yeah. We talk about Mosilo Mutepu, but she was at the launch of the Whistleblower House on Tuesday. She was in tears, thanking us that we have established this organization, because she has been hiring a bodyguard from her own funds, but her funds are empty now. There is now nothing left, and she will approach us. Then we have others, I'll just refer to Bianca again because I know she wouldn't mind, is that, post-traumatic stress disorder, deep major depression, high levels of anxiety, and no one takes care of that. There's the lawyers, yes, and there's another organization, PLAF, in South Africa, who also provides legal assistance to certain whistleblowers. But one of the areas that we are very passionate about is also to take care of that side of the whistleblower. Yeah. So, provide them access to trauma counselors, to psychiatrists, psychologists, and so on. And we are very happy to report that we have support from the relevant associations in this regard already, and someone is already seeing a trauma counselor because of us. Right. Yeah, so that is a very important area as well.
Absolutely fantastic that you are volunteering this information to us, because these are some of the issues that we may not necessarily have at the tip of our hands. And so please feel free to just give out information if you feel that the conversation is not yet getting to where you want it to go. But when we return, let's take a break. When we return, we're going to talk about strengthening the processes, the legislation that will help in the protection of whistleblowers, but also include in there the most basic needs of whistleblowers? You've already heard Liezl referring to just some of what they desperately need when the people get to the places such as Whistleblower House. We continue after this. You're watching Politics Unscripted, the segment of the show. It is the debate uncensored, and we are discussing the protection of whistleblowers. What is it that is most needed urgently when people like that approach the Whistleblower House, for example, which was recently launched this past week, when either a person wants to disclose information or they have disclosed information now, they need protection or they need help. Let's continue the conversation. We are with Ben Theron. He is the Executive Director at the Whistleblower House. We also have Liezl Groenewald, who is with the Ethics Institute. Ben, let's come to you. I don't want at all to sidestep the important element of this discussion, and it has to do with the protection of whistleblowers. I'd like to know from you, I mean, you have mentioned a whole number of issues along with Liezl in terms of the psychological need that whistleblowers are in, that they need desperate help with, legal fees. So the kind of money that we are talking about for these people to get adequate help, I'm assuming that you obviously are also going to be in desperate need as Whistleblower House for financial resources in order for you to be able to help.
Ole, you'd think that we spoke to you beforehand. We opened our doors on Tuesday without money. The reason why Whistleblower House is where it is today is because the 5 directors, myself included, took out of our own pockets and we contributed to have a website built. We built a website, opened up accounts, telephone numbers, all those kind of things we had to fork out ourselves. Because without that, you can't take this first step. So we decided to do that, so the first step now. And since Tuesday, after the launch, I've been very busy contacting institutions. They may not be specific about institutions, but it's across the spectrum.
Yeah.
So the idea is to raise funds for this very needy cause. Let's talk a little bit about the needs.
Okay.
Just 5 to 10 minutes on the needs so people understand where the money will be going.
Sure.
First and foremost, when somebody has information that they want to share, because, and as Mary de Haas spoke about in a SAPS environment, what do they do with that? Where do they go, etc.? So first of all, you need to be supported by a legal firm that can talk about the Protected Disclosure Act so that you can understand your rights, your limitations, what you can and what you may not do.
Yeah.
So that when they craft it for you, it is your affidavit and not somebody else's affidavit, but it is within very specific parameters that you need to do that, etc. So you need to start the journey with a lawyer, and you need to walk that journey, because as you move along, you may land up in court. You've got to defend yourself. You need people to defend you at work, because they will bully you, they will demote you. Spurious charges get brought against you. You brought the company into disrepute because you did your job and you did your civil duty, and then you get fired or demoted. That brings me to the next one, finances. The moment you lose your job, you can at least survive with family, friends, etc. But after a while, your friends become very few. When times are dark, friends are few. Family support you, but they run out of money, and in these difficult financial times, there's a limit to what people can do. So the idea that we have is to have a pool of money available so that we can at least support the whistleblower in terms of simple stuff. Very simple. Food. There's no food in the house. Electricity and water. There's nothing of that. Children need to be taken to school. There are expenses associated with that. Just airtime. Because you need to be able to speak to your lawyer. There's no money. So what happens is people then crumble inside. And what happens is they suffer physically, mentally, and therefore you've got to take care of that aspect of things. So lawyer, number one. Secondly is financial.
Yeah.
Thirdly is medical and psychological services. So what we want to do is to enable we want to be able to say to the whistleblower, you are suffering, go to a GP. We intend to have people on our panel. Go to a GP, have yourself checked out. The general practitioner will then say, you need a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Cost every step of the way. And the idea that we have is to have a fund so that we can do these things at no cost. Wouldn't it be lovely if the state actually were able to do these things and not us? Civil society stepped in purely because the gaps that exist there.
Yeah.
Right up front, Mary de Haas spoke about safety and security. I live in a normal house. I become a whistleblower. Suddenly, I have a break-in. I haven't had a break-in in 20 years. But immediately after, now you can talk about Johan as well as Temba Maseko, they didn't have a break-in for years. Suddenly, now, when the information is going to start being used, there's a break-in, and there's a focus on either bullying or the second one is to steal documents.
Yeah.
Luckily, they understand the environment, so therefore those things are secure. So the idea is that we have a look at their security. We then try to ensure that they at least feel safe. When they travel from home to either the lawyer or to a doctor, we will then try to provide a safe environment for them with security guards, transport, etc.
Yeah.
So those are the basic stuff. Something that nobody actually thought of before we started talking to whistleblowers is the loneliness they feel. So right now, there is a social platform and a social group, a WhatsApp group on Go, not ours, but we will be supporting it, where whistleblowers can talk to each other freely without being victimized, without being bullied, without being belittled. Because those people together understand different things affect people differently, in the sense where I don't have money, but I've got a friend, I've got family that support me. The next person doesn't have that. I don't get ill, but the next person gets ill. I don't suffer from depression, but the next person suffers. You understand? I'm just giving examples.
Sure.
So they support each other in that, and we will be supporting that as well. So hence, we are trying. So now let's get to the funding. We will probably need a few million, to be blunt, because doctors are expensive, lawyers are expensive, and what we try doing is to establish, we've contacted in excess of 20 legal firms, of which over the last week, before we launched, we had two firms on board ready to support us as we go along. Since Tuesday up until Friday, we've had feedback from 5 of them that says, let's talk about the details and let's contract those details so they can move forward, but we want to be on your books because we want to support whistleblowers. We need to support them. They are, in fact, the last barrier between where we are today and total anarchy. Because those people are the reason why we had an arms deal. We had a Zondo Commission. Because of whistleblowers, those things were exposed, and we owe them a huge debt of gratitude.
Liezl, you've been quiet for a while. Let me pose this question to you, and that's to say, so you've got people who are whistleblowers or those that have already blown the whistle and they need help. So Ben and his team are there to do that. What about families of those who have died, sadly?
Yes, Kole, that is really an area that we have not touched on yet. It is very important who supports those family members. Let's talk about Babita's Adukaran's family.
Yeah.
I know that people have reached out to them in the whistleblower fraternity, but Ben, maybe we should just also make a note of that we, start thinking about that as well, because we have not included that in our portfolio. What we have done, which Ben didn't mention yet, is that we also want to work with the media, in the sense that the media portrays information factually when it comes to a whistleblower. Okay, so we were so fortunate that Mandy Wiener actually hosted our opening webinar for us.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know that she's one of the very vocal whistleblower supporter journalists.
Indeed.
And there are many of you. So from our side, we also want to coach the whistleblowers on when to speak to the media and what to say to the media, and making sure that they get the right information, so that there's not, misinformation being distributed, but also to protect the identity, because there's the whistleblowers that we know of, and we know what has happened to them. And we only know of the whistleblowers who are, out there, have been exposed in the media. But there are many, many, many whistleblowers within organizations who have been victimized, and all of those things that Ben has spoken about, but, they're not known. Now, one of the things why people get victimized is very often because their identity is known.
Yeah.
And when you blow the whistle in the media, obviously, to a point, one can stay anonymous in the media, but, as a journalist yourself, that, there's a fine line sometimes. But people blowing the whistle anonymously it's possible, but they get victimized because somewhere along the line, the identity of the either the person or the identity of the environment in which the person works becomes known, because the information in their whistleblowing report has not been treated in a confidential manner. Let me take an example. You can have a whistleblower in the, let's say, procurement division of SARS, for example. But there are only 10 people working in the Pretoria head office in procurement. Now, I blow the whistle. I work in that area. I blow the whistle anonymously, but there's only 10 of us.
Yeah.
So now the report reaches the organization, SARS in this case. The person who receives that report doesn't quite know what to do with the report. Okay? So that person then goes with the report, and he go and tell his colleague, look, there's a report about misconduct in our procurement division. Everyone looks around. Yeah, there's 10 of you. Okay. Through a process of elimination, there the identity of the person can be discovered. Yeah. So it's really difficult. I do a lot of work within organizations regarding whistleblowing. I also audit some of the whistleblowing hotline service providers like Deloitte, Tip-Ops Anonymous, and so on an annual basis.
Yeah. And
as part of that work at the Ethics Institute, we help to sensitize employees in different organizations on the importance of blowing the whistle. But now, you stand there and you tell them that it's really important that you must blow the whistle, because if you don't blow the whistle, if you don't tell the organization what is wrong here within your midst, then no one can do anything about it, and it can then become the culture in the organization, the norm, that misconduct. But as you stand there and try to convince employees that please speak up or blow the whistle, you think of the cases that we know of what has happened to whistleblowers.
Exactly.
And then it becomes very difficult, to stand there convincingly, but ultimately it is the right thing to do. And if you talk to many of the whistleblowers that I have spoken to, Ben has spoken to a lot of whistleblowers, they will tell you that they will do it again. They say they might do it in a different manner next time.
Sure.
In order to protect themselves, and they now know, what can happen and so on.
All right.
But still, that moral courage, they will have it again.
Okay. So when we return, we're going to finalize this conversation, and I mentioned earlier, strengthening the systems that are meant to protect whistleblowers. What are those? What can be done? And again, going back to what we were told earlier by Mary de Haas, that police are part of the persecution. What we are in conversation with the Whistleblower House executive, that's Ben Theron. We also are talking to Liezl Groenewald, who is from the Ethics Institute, and we're talking about the best way to protect whistleblowers. Are they adequately protected? And we are at the tail end of this conversation. Ben, I'd like to bring you in, as you haven't spoken, and we are wrapping it up now. I'd like to go back to what we were told by Mary de Haas, and that is that if things are to change within the police, and remember, she said that they are, quote-unquote, part of the persecution of whistleblowers. And she is suggesting that the whole top management of the police has got to be changed if anything is going to go right in this instance. Is that even possible?
Well, you put me in a difficult position, purely from a point of view that I have a mandate to deal with whistleblowers and their plight and how to manage them through the journey that they take as whistleblowers. I'm not allowed, I feel uncomfortable, put it that way, to speak about the ability of different state organizations, what they are doing wrong, etc. Over the last few days, we've just heard that the commissioner has been relieved of his duties at the end of March. There's a process to follow. Whatever happens after that and the whole organization structure, I'm willing to say, however, there's a lot of work to be done in the law enforcement agencies to ensure that as we move forward as society, this society can be proud, they should feel safe, and gender-based violence, those things should be addressed. So I'm comfortable making those statements. And I will leave it at that.
Liezl, would you like to weigh in?
Yes. My colleague there is very diplomatic, and so it should be. Thank you, Ben. Colleague, in terms of the protection of whistleblowers, we are not going to change the Act very quickly. And I also don't want to bring in any law enforcement agencies because that's also going to take forever.
Yeah.
So what one can do is, number one, what we did with the Whistleblower House, establish the organization, provide an avenue for whistleblowers to come to us, and we help you with your security, your physical protection, okay? And we assess the risk around your situation. Then, in terms of the Protected Disclosures Act, there are many groups out there advocating for change to it and improvement of it. I was at a Southern Africa regional workshop of the UNODC just 2 or 3 weeks ago, where we talked about the whistleblowing protection laws in Southern Africa. And I can promise you, there isn't a perfect one. Everyone says it doesn't work. In the meantime, then we have the Whistleblower House. We have organizations that should make sure that they have the right policies and procedures in place to protect their whistleblowers against victimization or retaliation. Now, what is fantastic is many organizations these days have those policies. However, the problem comes in with the implementation of those policies. And I believe that the moment organizations start acting against the retaliators in their organizations, that will improve the protection of the whistleblowers.
Okay, can I quickly come in there, Liezl?
Yeah.
If you don't mind. Can I quickly come in and pose the question, therefore? If you're going to prevent the retaliators, is it not prudent that the whole law enforcement architecture, and when I talk about them, I'm specifically talking about dedicated courts, because it has been suggested that dedicated courts should possibly be set up that will deal specifically with corruption matters so that whistleblowers feel protected, because the faster a case goes, the quicker it is possible to take the persecutor of this whistleblower to jail.
Absolutely. So, action, that is what is needed, Tolly, it's action. So if we can get those kind of courts, and there is finally, also one day perhaps, then there will be consequence management. Okay, so one of the things that deters whistleblowers currently is, and that is found by research, is that they don't believe that anything will be done. Now, that is in terms of organizations, but on a national level, international level, we see the same thing, that we still have people walking around there, in our country, who should have been locked away a long time ago. And so the problem is, why should I now blow the whistle? I'm going to be harassed. I'm going to be victimized. Thank goodness I can now go to the Whistleblower House who will help me. But ultimately my case can still take 4 or 5 or 6 years or, forever. And when you talk to whistleblowers, they tell you that every time they have to write another affidavit, every time they have to speak on a talk show or a radio interview, every time it opens that trauma again and it all starts again.
All right.
No, yeah.
Liezl,
good, thanks.
Unfortunately, I am out of time. I'm going to quickly give Ben the last word. Ben, what is to be done in order for the law, and particularly those who are persecuting whistleblowers, to feel the full impact of the law? What can be done very quickly?
The Zondo Commission made very specific recommendations in his second report. His third report is due this week. I'm quite sure the recommendations there will be very practical, not ideological, not theoretical, absolutely practical. That says the MPA need to do X, SAPS and Hawks need to do Y, the presidency need to do something, and hopefully those recommendations will be implemented swiftly, quickly, and effectively. I just wanted to, while I've got the floor, Whistleblower House has a website, whistleblowerhouse.org. All that we do is in there. Please be patient. There are 2 people. I like the way you said, me and my team. There are only 2 people. Cynthia Stimple is also a whistleblower, and she's supporting me in actually getting this thing up and running. We are short-staffed. We are short of money. Please go there, donate. If you're a big organization, donate big. But there is no minimum amount that you can donate. We need you on board. Thank you.
Thank you both so much for a very informative session, and I think that's what this was. Ben Theron is the Executive Director at the Whistleblower House, and Liezl Groenewald is from the Ethics Institute. Earlier, we were also joined by Mary de Haas, a human rights activist and author. Thank you all for your contribution to this very, very important topic.